Hey guys, MujoK here to bring you the newest information on Noctis. And as we suspected, he is going to be the best unit in the game. It's not even a question. The only thing that I'm curious about is exactly how he compares to the Japanese version. I know that in Japan, his TM has an extra like 30% attack and magic added to it, and people were kind of upset about that, but if the skills shown here are the way that he is released, he's going to be the best unit for quite a while, and it's not even going to be close. Let's get into it. So, I don't know where to begin. He has the best base stats in the game, and when we were looking at the announcement and it said 158 attack, what they usually do in those graphics is they factor in all the passives and things like that. So my assumption was that his attack was 158 with passives, which seemed okay because his magic was 150, and it was kind of like, okay, this guy looks like a hybrid character, so he can't have the highest attack and magic. But it turns out that he does have the highest attack base stats, and the reason they didn't add in a bunch of passives to that was because it depends on what kind of equipment you wear. So he does have a pretty good equipment selection here, definitely more so than a lot of your best attackers. And each one of those kind of triggers a different passive. Blindside is just a forgettable skill. You're not really ever going to use that unless you're just a 5-star level 1. I mean, there's no other reason to use that. He gets a passive for using short swords, which is actually in this game dagger. So the only dagger of note right now that I can think of is the kitchen knife. And if you're really that desperate, then you're not going to be maximizing this guy's potential at all. But you do get a 20% attack and 15% defense passive from that. Fish is going to be useful in some situations where you want to guarantee that Noctis is targeted instead of somebody else in your party who's about to die. He does get passives for regular swords as well. Attack 20%, spirit 15%. From my estimation, spirit passive is probably the least important for him to have, but if you were to put something like an enhancer as your sword, then you're getting the 20% attack passive and you're getting whatever amount of magic comes on that sword as well. I think it's like 22, 23. So that's one possibility. Cover is... This is where we're going to show just how versatile this guy is. He really is pretty much like an all-in-one unit. And he's not a jack of all trades, as in he's good at nothing, but decent at everything, master of none, or whatever the saying is. I'm drawing a blank here. But he's actually good at everything, seriously. Okay, so he heals and refreshes MP per turn over 3 turns to all allies. So he's basically regenerating life and MP to your whole party for 32 MP here. That's what cover means here. This passive here, increase attack 35% when equipped with a great sword. This is probably going to be one of your best equipment choices. Excalibur, Save the Queen, things like that if you have it. If you don't have TMs, then you're probably not going to want to bother with a great sword. Link, this would just be situational if you need to, buff up your team and your healer's tied up with healing or raising or things like that, but this is not necessarily a go-to skill here. Some people who do not have dual wield TM will probably put on a sword and a shield, or a weapon and a shield, I should say, and that shield's going to give you passive defense and spirit, which is good. He gets a passive for throwing weapons, which is magic and spirit. If you have something like a Rising Sun, I can see a situation where you might want to consider that. But again, Spirit's not really that important, although magic is. Point Warp is kind of his first of many WTF skills. It's a jump ability with a good multiplier 3x, has a typical delay and everything. But not only is it a jump ability, but it also recovers his own HP by 2,000, and more importantly, his MP by 135. So as long as you keep your MP above 50 so you can use this skill, he's never going to run out of MP. He can just do this whenever he's running low. Just insane, guys. I mean, and not only that, but he heals himself. So if he's in trouble, if he's running out of MP, he can just jump, do point warp, and he's basically, good to go afterward. At 6 star, he gets parry, which is your typical 20% damage negation, physical damage negation. If you wear a gun, he gets 20% magic and defense. Again, if you have Mustadio's TM, you might want to consider this. Otherwise, I don't think it's worth it. This is probably your other best passive increase here. You get 20% to attack and magic when equipped with a katana, and these are his two most important stats by far. So if you do have dual wield TM, I would recommend putting on a great sword for that 35% attack boost and a katana for the attack and magic. And the reason you want to lean a little bit more heavily toward attack versus magic is because I'll explain in just a second actually. But yeah, I recommend katana and then great sword. Fire Flask is his first hybrid damage ability. And of course, it's worth noting that it's elemental coverage as well. He has good elemental coverage of Fire, Blizzard, and Thunder. The Fire one has 4x hybrid damage, which is really good. It's not as good as Bart's, who has his Wind ability is 5.4, and it's a hybrid ability, but that's only a single target. This is an AoE and 4x, so it's very, very high. And it inflicts 2 random status ailments, or 30% chance to all enemies. So yeah, you're doing good damage, and you're doing status ailments. And of course, it's AoE. The Blizzard Flask, ice hybrid damage, and has a chance to stop all enemies, 30%. Again, pretty insane. Lightning hybrid damage, 4x, and reduces defense and spirit, 30% for 3 turns to all enemies. So you're debuffing, and you're doing damage on an AoE basis, and you're covering elemental weaknesses possibly at the same time. Pretty crazy skills there. Damage Warp is basically an improved counter. In addition to countering physical damage with a 30% chance, he's also healing himself as if it wasn't good enough to counter. Warp Decoy, he negates 3 attacks basically for X number of turns. We don't know how much that is, but it might be on the lines of Chizuru, which would be 2 turns. If he equips spears, he gets attack and spirit 20%. Again, I don't necessarily think that's the best, but if you have a really good spear and that's one of your best weapons, then definitely go for it. Comeback. So as if he wasn't a good enough attacker, as if he wasn't healing your party, regenerating their MP, covering elements, debuffing enemies, etc., etc., he also has the ability to fully revive one KO'd ally. So along with Refia, he can now do this as well. Pretty insane. And then he, just for kicks, adds HP, MP plus 15% passive. Chosen King, because he's going to be the king of global for a long time. And then his go-to single target skill, Warp Break, which is pretty insane, guys. It's a 2.5 multiplier, and it has ignored defense by 40%, not 25%, but 40. So 2.5, 40%, that turns out to be like a 4.166 multiplier in effect, which is already insanely high. And on top of that, it decreases attack and defense by 30% for 3 turns to one enemy. So it's a debuff on top of doing all that damage. And it's a little bit cheaper than your typical 45 MP skill. So, it's just like every way that they could improve upon the current meta, they just threw it into this guy. It's pretty insane. For me, this is particularly important, along with those elemental flasks, especially the Thunder Flask. It's particularly important for me because I don't have a full breaker or debuffer on my team. I don't have an Elza, and I don't use a full breaker because there's no 6-star ones in global yet. So having this kind of character would be a really huge boost to my team, on top of all the other skills that he has. He has healing, I already mentioned it. He has pretty much everything. It's pretty insane. And then the icing on the cake is his limit burst is just like WTF good. At level 1, 8x multiplier, guys. 8x. And then he also decides to throw in kind of like a Sacred Guard. Attack, defense, magic, spirit up by 50% for 2 turns to all allies. Which is, if you're not familiar, that's basically like Paladin Cecil's limit burst, which is already one of the best limit bursts in the game. Granted, Cecil's is 3 turns versus 2, but the fact that he's doing this insane damage and doing that for all your party, It's seriously like they're just trying to throw in every possible thing, every possible utility that they can to this guy. Now, I'm not one to normally chase 5 stars too hard. I think it's very risky. It could be very costly and everything. But I'm definitely going all out on all 4 of my accounts. I want to have him on at least one of my accounts. I might even chase him on my main because he's just going to be such a huge difference maker. He's going to be the best unit for a while. I need pretty much everything he does is just wow. There's just no other way around it. He's the best unit, and if you get him, great. For those of us that don't get him, we're gonna hate you. But hopefully, enough of us do get him that we'll have fun for very many months to come. Just an insane unit. I can't wait to pull for him. I really, really hope I get him. And yeah, I'm sorry if this review was just like me bubbling over with excitement, but there's really not anything bad to say about this guy. I guess if they threw in like a magic debuff, he would be just like the perfect unit, but he's already insane. There's not much to complain about. Pull for him, guys. Reroll if you have to. If you don't have like a really high rank account, he's definitely worth rerolling for. And yeah, good luck to all of us.